Well, Razorback fans, I got to talk about it. I know I don't believe it, but I got to talk about it. What if Arkansas actually beats Texas on Saturday?
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon at Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Go on the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Wednesday, midway point of the week, and kind of getting into the game mode, right? Coming off of a bye, starting to feel like, hey, yeah, let's go. Texas week. Woo! I'm trying over here, but I know a lot of you aren't very excited, and understandable. I mean, there's a lot of reasons not to be very excited about this weekend, considering how things have gone. But I do want to bring it up because we'll talk about some of the things Steve Sarkisian had to say, especially given the rivalry of Arkansas and Texas, and also something to deal with the SEC here in the show or the podcast or whatever. But I do this often on this podcast, specifically during football season, and specifically when you're going up against a team that is way above you. And it's the what if game. What if Arkansas beats Texas? Now, Texas is number 3 team in the country right now. They are primed, where they've only had one loss on the season. It was to Georgia. And I'm not taking anything away from them, but Texas, honestly, has not faced a whole lot of great teams this year besides Georgia. They've gotten wins. I mean, you got to give them credit, but not having to play Bama, not having to play LSU. They've been able to benefit from not exactly having a huge non-conference game, which isn't their fault. Michigan definitely would have been great if Harbaugh was still the coach, but he's not. So I think Texas is one of the best teams in the country, but I also don't think that they've truly been tested as much as some other teams. But when you're going by the numbers, I love looking at game notes. I love breaking it down that way because it really tells the tale, especially this late in the season, of what these teams are all about. So this should really make all of you Razorback fans feel pretty good. Texas is number 2 in the SEC in scoring offense and number 10 in the country. Texas is also number 1 in the SEC in scoring defense and number 4 in the country. Texas is number 4 in the nation, or it's 4 in the SEC in total offense, 9th in the country. And Texas is also first in the SEC and 2nd in total defense. So just to clarify and to recap, when it comes to scoring and totals for offense and defense, Texas is a top 5 team in the SEC in all categories and a top 10 team nationally in all categories. Needless to say, it doesn't really bode very well for Arkansas because Arkansas has some things that they're pretty decent at. In fact, I still am pretty shocked that Arkansas's total offense is 2nd in the SEC, 5th in the nation. Arkansas is averaging they're 5th in the country in total offense, which is yards per game at 483.6. So it just doesn't look good for Arkansas. The Texas Longhorns lead the SEC in passes intercepted. They're also 2nd in the SEC, 7th in the nation in turnovers gained. They're number 1 in the country in pass efficiency defense. They are also number 2 in the SEC at first downs allowed. The list just goes on and on of what this Texas team does really good. So I have a bad feeling about this, folks. I really do. I have a bad feeling that Arkansas is going to lose this game. And not just lose it, but potentially lose it in a very embarrassing way. It could be potentially as bad as what we saw against Ole Miss. But as we also know, college football is weird. SEC football is weird. And Arkansas is just weird within general. So given all those circumstances, given all those stats, given all those things, it's safe to say that Arkansas is a pretty massive underdog. So what if they win? What if they beat the Texas Longhorns? What if that happens? Well, first off, Some of you may not want to hear it, and I understand, but it's the truth, and I'll agree with it. If you beat Texas, Sam Pittman's coming back next year. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Even if they lost to Missouri, I think even if they lost to Louisiana Tech, he's coming back, as he should. Because if you have that type of win against that type of team, it's going to elicit a pretty large emotion from not only the fans, but the administration, the people who are in charge of doing all those things. It's going to ignite that and make everything much better. Because then suddenly, finishing the season 8-4 feels a little bit better. You're sitting at 4-3 in SEC play with a chance to go 5-3 in SEC play and beat a Missouri team at the end of the year that's very beatable. Not saying Arkansas will beat them, but they're very beatable. So there you have it. That's the biggest impact. Sam Pittman will be the guy for the next year, and he should be if they beat Texas. What will also happen is you will turn the entire college football landscape, and especially the SEC, upside down. Because right now you got Texas and Tennessee pretty much in the driver's seat of what they're going to try to do in SEC play and be the SEC representatives in the title game. And then after that, you have a bunch of 2-loss teams. Well, if Texas loses and that gives them their second loss, suddenly that adds another team into the mix that could, it's like one of 5 teams that could end up with 2 losses, where even though there's a 12-team playoff, doesn't necessarily mean they're just going to add any SEC team that they want and just pluck them up and do it that way. Like, it's going to cause chaos, which I love. I mean, if you can't be a part of the playoff scene, might as well cause it to be insane and cause it to have some major problems. That would be nice. But it'll definitely do that on college football. What it'll also mean if Arkansas wins and beats Texas, Texas suddenly has to start really understanding the approach that Razorback fans have towards them and towards this game and why it's so important. Because if that happens, and it's going to be, at this point in time, 3 straight wins they would have against Texas, 2 of which being over the past 5 years, and both of which being in pretty crucial times. It's going to show that Texas can not look at a team like Arkansas, no matter the circumstances, and just say, easy win. We don't really care about them. It makes it into where if you want to rival, if you want to have at least a rivalry hatred with a team like Texas, and if Texas wants that Texas does not want that with Arkansas, but that would be the type of win, the type of game that would really spark that, especially coming into SEC play. That would make a major difference. And just imagine how that would feel. Some of you would feel like it's all for naught because you want rid of Sam Pittman. And if you win this game and that means you keep Sam Pittman, some of you may not be down for that. I'm just being honest with you. Some of you may, not saying you're wanting Arkansas to lose, but you're also, if you were given the option of, hey, if Arkansas, I can give you this. If Arkansas loses to Texas, Sam Pittman's gone. Arkansas beats Texas and Sam Pittman stays. A lot of you would take the deal of Sam Pittman moving on. Not all of you, but a lot of you. And I understand. But to be able to have a win like that and to have 2 top 5 wins at home where you handed, because right now, at least statistically speaking, handed the 2 best teams in the SEC their only loss of the season, or I guess would technically be the second one for Texas, but very, very few amount of losses. And I guess it would be the only team that Texas didn't lose to that wasn't in the top 5, like Georgia was. But you get what I'm saying. Like, if you were able to do that at home and all of that, it would just be an incredibly satisfying but frustrating feeling. And what I mean by that is I would be thankful. I'd be excited. I'd love it. I'd love to beat Texas. There's nothing I'd love more to beat Texas. But then after the celebration dies down, after the energy dies down a little bit, and after you come back down to reality, you start thinking, where was this? Where was this during Ole Miss? Where was this during LSU? How come he couldn't do this against them, where you looked like you didn't even belong on the same field as them? And here you are beating Texas, number 3 team in the country. How would that make sense? It wouldn't. So, not saying it would be like a lost cause, but there'd just be a lot of head scratchers. But if you beat Texas, here's another thing too. If you beat Texas, you have to go 8-4. I will not accept losing to Missouri at the end of the year. Sorry, I won't do it. If you beat Texas, you have to beat Missouri. There's no excuses for that. If you beat Texas, you can end the year on a great note. Going 8-4, 5-3 in SEC play, folks, may not have gone the way you wanted it at times, may have had some frustrating games at times, and you may not always be excited about the Sam Pittman experiment or the Sam Pittman era going forward, but that would be an incredible turnaround. Going from a team that won 1 SEC game to 5 the next year, team that went 4-8 to flipping it to 8-4. You have to give credit where credit is due. And again, I'm not predicting Arkansas to beat Texas. I'm not. I told you I have a fear of it. But if they do, it's going to get crazy around here. Chaotic, ridiculous, and not knowing what to do. Everybody will be in such a conundrum. No one will know what to do. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll talk about actually what Steve Sarkisian had to say about this game, particularly this rivalry, and dealing with the hatred that Arkansas fans have for Texas. So stay with us here on Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, all you Razorback fans, you know I got to tell you about the GameTime app. It is the best app when it comes to purchasing tickets for all sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, theater, everything. It is always about GameTime app. And a lot of you might be thinking about coming to Arkansas and Texas this weekend. Maybe from my previous segment, I've talked you into it where you're like suddenly, oh, maybe I want to be a part of that. Well, here's your opportunity to get your tickets with the GameTime app. You get the chance to toggle a feature that shows all the totals up front. So there's no hidden fees or surprise fees at checkout. It's one of the best features out there. You get seat views, so you can see a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you actually buy. And you also get the lowest price guaranteed, or GameTime will credit you with 110% of the difference. It's that simple. Your purchase is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime Picks. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I always have been fascinated by people's understanding or lack of understanding of the Arkansas and Texas hatred, rivalry, at least the feelings that Razorback fans have towards Texas. It's never been good. But this in particular is fascinating whenever you have them back in conferences. I mean, they haven't been in the same conference in decades. And it used to be, I don't care what anybody says, it used to be a heated rivalry. One that, I mean, everybody hates Texas, but because Arkansas was the Lone Ranger and being the only team in the Southwest Conference not in Texas, there was always a little bit of extra juice behind it. Well, Steve Sarkisian, the head coach of Texas, was asked about this and about the rivalry, about the hatred and everything. Had some pretty fascinating things to say. Take a listen.
This Arkansas rivalry is sort of like underrated just because there's so much focus on A&M.
I think it might be underrated nationally. I don't know if it's going to get the same exposure that it would nationally, but I will tell you internally, it's getting the same amount that's needed, that it deserves. And this rivalry's been going on for a long, long time. I was joking with the team this morning. I don't know what Darrell Royal did to Arkansas back in the day, but they absolutely hate our guts. And I think we learned that the first time around when we went there. You watch some of the clips at the end of that game, and Joe Tessitore is talking about that Arkansas, hates Texas more than they like themselves. And he might be right. So I think from our perspective, internally we understand and value this rivalry, and it's great to have back. It's great for the state of Texas. It's great for the state of Arkansas. I wish nationally it probably got the exposure that this thing deserves. There's been some great games historically that these two teams have butted heads on, and so obviously we're looking forward to the opportunity.
So I liked actually what he had to say, and I don't have a problem with Sarkisian, to be honest. He had the issues at USC and everything, but it seems like he's a heck of a coach and a really good offensive mind. And he's not really done anything to make me mad or me not to like him. And I liked his answer. He was simply, they hate us a lot more than they love themselves or like themselves. And I think that's an interesting way to put it. I don't believe that completely. I think there is a little bit of it, a little bit of that anger, a little bit of that hatred. But I also don't believe that Razorback fans feel that way entirely. And it's such a weird thing because we see rivalries in history go through droughts of not playing each other for a long time because of conference realignment, because of just the game changing within itself, everything like that. And to me, I thought it was so funny when I was talking to people at SEC Media Days. I think it was 2 years ago, but they were talking about like, why do you hate Texas and everything? Like, I was like, yeah, I do. Like, how often have you guys played since you've been alive? I was like, I don't know, 5 times, and most of them are in bowl games. Like, so you hate them because of 5 games? And it started making me kind of think about it. I was like, yeah, why? Well, I think it's pretty obvious, at least for me. And it may be for you too. Some of you around my age, I'm, of course, so young in my old age. But a lot of you hate Texas because of the reasons I hate Texas. My dad. So you may have a parent, mom or dad or uncle, whoever, that grew up hating Texas. And then when you're born and you're growing up as a Razorback fan, your parents, your dad, whoever, would tell you about Texas and why they hate Texas and why they always have hated Texas and the things that Texas did and the things that Texas said and how pompous and arrogant they were. And they thought they were better than everybody else. And they always got the calls and they had all the control and blah, blah, blah. And it's just funny because I heard it so much growing up that it resonated with me. I didn't have any sort of hatred for Texas because of any particular game. I mean, the games I remember standing out to me was Arkansas going down in the Cotton Bowl and kicking the crap out of them in 2000. And them kicking the crap out of them in the Texas Bowl in 2014. Kicking the crap out of them in 2021. I remember the ambush in Austin back in 2003 too. Kicking the crap out of them then. In fact, really, 2004 you lost barely. There, Matt Jones fumbled the ball at the end. Would have won, I believe, because Arkansas could have kicked a field goal to win it. And you got trounced in 2008. But overall, Arkansas's had some pretty good success in my lifetime against Texas. And so that hatred kind of builds up, and it's building up this week too. And what makes it exponentially worse is because Texas is actually good. And there's nothing worse than seeing Longhorns be good at something because they don't know any ounce, any shred of like being humble in their success, which I know a lot of teams don't, and I know a lot of Razorback fans wouldn't either. But when it's so many of them, and especially since they haven't really been that team in that sport or in nearly any sport in a long time, it makes it exponentially worse. And I'm starting to feel that again. But young fans hate them because they were told to. It's pretty much what it is. Young fans were taught to hate Texas or do hate Texas because they were told to. And I think with the connections there with Texas and the students and everything, and the students leaving Texas to come to Arkansas and all of that, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. But it's going to continue to build. And I'm just happy that Arkansas and Texas are going to play each other every sport every year. Greg Sankey did a good job with that. And I think that's important. I think that's something that is necessary, has to happen. So I'm hopeful this weekend that something good happens because it would be really funny to troll the Texas fans and everything. But, I mean, considering the amount of success that Arkansas has had in football against the Longhorns over the past 20 years, or at least since leaving the Southwest Conference, I'd have that feeling once again deep inside, like Nolan Richardson once said, hey, one more time, Horns. I like that feeling. Let's hope it actually happens on Saturday. Probably not, but let's hope. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the SEC and handing out some fines and why it actually was a great thing that they did. So stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, all you Razorback fans, I'm here to tell you about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on, all in one place. So when you get in the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. This has nothing necessarily to do with Arkansas. It's more of an SEC thing. But I saw that the SEC had fined LSU and Ole Miss a significant amount of money. Ole Miss, they fined $350,000. One of which, the $250,000, was because they rushed the field after beating Georgia. And then an additional $100,000 because they rushed the field early. It was like 16 seconds or whatever, which I understand. Like, that shows you how, like, an idiot, when you have an idiot fan base. It's like you should know you can't rush the field before the game's over. And you just did. You're just a bunch of drunk idiots. So they did. It's probably worth the fine if you're an Ole Miss fan. But $350,000 for that. LSU got fined $250,000. They didn't rush the field, but they threw things on the field. They threw garbage and crap on the field when they didn't like a call that was in that Alabama game. Now, I am all for field storming as long as it's not something that becomes a constant problem when it's happening nonstop for certain teams. Like, I'm fine with that. And I'm fine with the SEC fining, no pun intended, the teams that do that and fining them very heavily. But the thing like LSU, and all goes back to Texas, another reason to hate Texas, because I'll do why I hate Texas later this week. But it bothers me whenever people just start throwing trash or throwing things on the field when they don't like a call. That needs to stop ASAP. It has to stop. Because all that's going to do is be problematic for those fan bases that do it. It's going to set precedents for people who do things the right way, where they're going to start making it to where they're going to put nets up in front of the stands to keep people from throwing crap on the field. And that's just dumb. If you disagree with the call, fine. It happens. Trust me, Razorback fans know all about it. But you should never, especially even when that call did not cost you the game. I can understand if Arkansas in that 2020 Auburn game where it was the backwards pass, Bo Nix thing, that it was still, they still shouldn't have thrown anything on the field, but that game was in Fayetteville and that call happened. There's a lot of understanding of why everyone's got to be really pissed off about that. But you're talking about things that happen in the middle of the game that haven't even dictated who wins or loses. And that's how mad you get over a bad call, or even if the call's not that bad. Stop throwing things on the field. You're going to ruin it for everyone else. You're going to cause a major problem for schools, for security, and you're also going to hurt somebody. Like I saw in the Utah State game, I think they said that's, or Utah BYU game, that I think it was a cheerleader coach or somebody got hurt. Folks, stop, because somebody will get hurt. There's a difference in throwing a plastic bottle and anything else, because everyone's like, it's just a plastic bottle. Well, plastic balls can hurt when they're coming throwing at you from, however many feet away and coming down on the ground, and then that cap hits you right in the face. Yeah, that can still hurt and it can still cause problems. So they got to stop this. I don't know what the right move is, but if they find out if anybody that does throw things on the field, I am all in favor of banning them for life. Seriously. Because there's never an excuse. There's never a reason to do that. Ban those people for life. Fine the schools. Do whatever it takes to get that done. But this whole epidemic of throwing things on the field when you disagree with stuff is childish and stupid. And it's so funny because it's LSU and Texas are the ones that have been doing it. Literally the two programs that, you know what those are? Those are the privileged kids that got everything. They got told yes their entire lives because they've won so much or they're big time schools, yet they can't handle a little bit of calls going their way. I mean, you don't see anybody else in the SEC doing it. It's usually the ones that are the biggest babies about everything too. So just got to take it. It's got to end. It's got to end quickly. Appreciate each and every one of you listening in and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. See you then.